the Fandom Bricks podcast.
On to our main topic then this week. Now, this is something that we have been discussing for a while now, the return of Lord of the Rings Lego. I know this was our topic one of our topics last week, that we were talking about the big £500 Lord of the Rings Lego set. But this week we got picture reveals of the Bricksheadz Lord of the Rings set. So what we're going to do today is do a hit or miss. So we're going to go through each of those Bricksheadz and we're going to tell you our opinions, whether we think they look like they're a hit or if they are a miss. So I think what we'll do is we'll kind of save the juicy ones to the end, Josh, and maybe start off nice and simple. I think we should start with Arwen and Aragorn. Happy to do that?
Yeah.
Happy. So let's go Arwen first then, Josh. What are your thoughts on this Brickhead?
I mean, it's very I like the colour scheme because it's Return of the King style Arwen as it's Return of the King style Aragorn. So this is the end of the trilogy. I like the design, though, as we have seen with a lot of Brickheads, they give them massive foreheads and it does look like Arwen has got a receding hairline. So, I mean, it's a hit if you're a fan of Return of the King, but for me, nah. I just think the design of Arwen isn't that great, but I like the colour scheme they've used for it.
Yeah, no, so you're sort of edging towards the miss.
Yeah.
Almost a hit, but not quite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm pretty much the same. Again, the receding hairline is always a bit of an iffy one. I'm going to come back to that one in a minute with another one of these. I do like the printed piece on her forehead, but I thought, considering the detail that are in some of these Brickheads, I'm thinking, I mean, I've got the Ahsoka one, the Mando one right behind me there, and Darth Vader and Obi-Wan, and even on Aragorn, there's so much detail on the torso, and Arwen is just plain from like here downwards. I just felt like it was a bit of I get that that is the dress and that's the style, but I think, like you said, if they had gone for a different scenario Arwen, they could have gone and done a bit more detail on it, or maybe put a bit more detail onto it, because it just seems a bit plain for me. So for me, it's a miss.
Yeah. I think if they'd have gone for like the Fellowship Arwen, maybe that would have worked better, like the green or the red, maybe.
I think it would have given them a bit more to work with. I think the fact that they've gone Return of the King, and I get why they've done that for Aragorn, but I think they've kind of backed themselves into a corner, really, and they didn't really have much choice other than to do what they did with it. So yeah, it's I'm similar to, I do like it. But overall, I think it is just edging into the miss. When I was kind of writing these down into a hit and miss, I had her in the middle because I couldn't quite decide. But I think just kind of edging into the miss side there.
Yeah.
Okay. So on to Aragorn then. What do we think?
Hit, because I like the design. They obviously, again, it's Return of the King Aragorn, so it's when he is crowned the King of Gondor. And I like the detailing, the darker colours, the silver, the grey, sort of like the really dark black, blue kind of robe design. The how they've done his crown is okay, because, again, it's a Brickhead. They've had to use different build techniques. But if you compare the two characters, Aragorn and the design of him is a lot better than the design of Arwen. Like, they've done Arwen very dirty. Aragorn's gotten off very nicely, I think. In my opinion, anyway. Yeah,
again, I completely agree. I think that this set has revolved around the choice of doing Return of the King, having him as the king, and in that scene, I think that was the initial starting point for this set design. And then, like I said, they kind of backed themselves into a corner with that Arwen, because I think Aragorn is as good as I could have imagined he was going to be. I don't think there's anything on there that I think doesn't work. I think the full design, it kind of flows through the torso, the legs, obviously the face and the printing all looks great. I think this was the focus of the set, and I think Arwen was kind of almost an afterthought on this one. I think they may have done themselves more justice by just kind of releasing Aragorn on his own.
Yeah.
So far a hit and a miss. This I'm going to go on to I'm going to save one for the last. So I'm going to go on to Frodo and Gollum next. Let's start with Frodo first. What did you think?
This one I was on the fence about because the design they've gone for Frodo is nice. Don't get me wrong. I like the torso printing. I like the detailing, things like that. I don't like how they've done Frodo's hair.
I'm glad you said that. It makes it look like he's got a skinhead or something, like just really short. A number 2
like
all over.
Yeah. Or like his hair is really greasy or wet and it's stuck to his head. I think the look from the head down, it's a great brickhead and it's a really nice detailed brickhead, and it's good because it's kind of the Two Towers version of Frodo when he meets Gollum and things like that. So that's the kind of time they're aiming for. But I don't like the hair, so change the hairpiece on the brickhead Frodo and it's a hit.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I think when you think of hobbits, you think of that like curly kind of ringlet hair that they've got. And it's in the name. They're brickheads. So the head is the focus of these builds. And it's what should be, I guess, the most accurate part of the build. If I think back to Darth Vader, the amount of detail that they get into that Darth Vader, and then they go for Frodo. And I just feel like if you took that head off and you looked at that head on its own, who's going to guess that that's Frodo? I'd argue next to no one. But I'm sure, and like you said with the receding hairline, that was my initial thought. It just looks, because that kind of 2x4 tile, it's just so high up. It does just make it look like he's got really short hair. It just doesn't work. I'm sure that there is or are some clever people out there that will very quickly modify it and make it look good. And I'm sure that's going to be a really simple thing to do. I know that myself and you actually both have the Manchester United Brickheadz, which came with an ungodly amount of spare parts. And I know that there's a few brown hair pieces in there that I might be able to utilize and try and rectify it. So I do like you said, I do like the torso, but overall, when you look at it without knowing what it is, I'm not convinced that you would look at that and say that's Frodo Baggins. And
no, I agree. I 100% agree.
Even questioning it has to be a miss. It has to be a miss.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I think these last 3 are the most interesting ones. So we'll move on to the other one in this set, which of course is Gollum. So what are your thoughts?
Don't like it. Hate it.
Yeah.
Hate it.
It doesn't look anything like him at all.
No, absolutely hate it.
Other than it's small and a similar colour.
Yeah, I think they should have just bit the bullet on this one and just given us a bald brickhead that was the same height as Frodo and similar to what they've done with Voldemort. Just completely bald, maybe a couple of small tile pieces for the teeth, one for the eyes, one different colour, like a darkish grey or brown piece for the waist, because obviously it's Gollum, he's a creature, and then the rest of it should have just been grey or cream, and then just left it at that. Yeah, I hate it. I hate this one so much. Like, Arwen, I can let off with a receding hairline because she comes with the Aragorn and the Aragorn is great. I can give Frodo a pass because you can modify the Frodo to suit what you want, but the Gollum is just the exact opposite of what you'd expect it to look like.
Yeah, I don't see... but I think purely because they're doing Frodo as a normal size Brickheadz, I just don't see how at any point they thought that they were going to be able to get enough detail to kind of convey Gollum at the scale that they've actually built him. It's so small. When you think about the size of those Brickheadz, and he's almost like half the size of Frodo, you're not going to get any detail, any emotion, anything from that scale brick. And I was the same as you. I genuinely laughed when I first saw it. We kind of got sent the pictures, I think, in our group chat again. And I remember opening it up and just having a little giggle to myself, just thinking, what have they done?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really... I think this 2-pack was the most disappointing.
And this is the thing as well. You look... because I've looked at the Brickheadz on Instagram before we were recording for the podcast, and I looked at them on Instagram and I went through and looked at all the prices. It's a 2-part Brickheadz set, and they're still charging you for a 2-part Brickheadz set. That is wrong in itself, because the Gollum is not even the same height or scale as Frodo. Surely they should charge you for the one Brickhead and give you the option for the Gollum. I don't think they should charge you for a 2-pack.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's
Not
been
getting your money's worth.
there's been rumours, and obviously I'm sure we'll talk about this set when we get pictures. But the Endor Brickheadz set that's coming out, I think by the looks of it, they've reduced the price because they've got a smaller Ewok and R2D2 in it, which are smaller builds, and so the overall price is less than it would have been with like all the individual builds at like £10 or $10, whatever it is. So it did really surprise me to see that wasn't the case with this one. We had discussed over the past couple of weeks that Lego, I've always felt like Lego were going to not overcharge, but they were going to have premium prices on these Lord of the Rings sets because we know how sought after they're going to be. But yeah, I mean, we even before we started the podcast 2 months ago or 2.5 months ago, we've been discussing Lord of the Rings Lego for a long time, for months and months now. And to kind of get our first proper image reveals and to have this as one of them, it was really quite disappointing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think looking at them so far and these Brickheads and things like that, I'm not excited for the Brickhead because there's only, say, maybe 1-2 of the Brickheads in all of the packs that I would own directly, but the rest I'm just meh. I probably would build one and I would keep the rest of them bagged with spare parts if I did a mock or I was wanting to do something to another set. So I'm disappointed because for something that is so high, it's just there. It's you know.
Yeah, it's fallen a bit flat, I think. Well, you've kind of hinted at it, but we'll get on to the last two then really quickly before we discuss it more. But obviously the final 2-pack is Gandalf and the Balrog. Now, I obviously said last week that my kind of dream Lord of the Rings set would be a kind of diorama-ish Balrog versus Gandalf. As soon as I said that last week, I went away and started like piecing out what I thought it might be and started looking at the Horntail and thought maybe I could make it myself. So I might get onto that at some point. But I think we'll start with Gandalf. For me, this was an easier one to decide on. So for me, Gandalf was the biggest hit of the 6. I couldn't think. Looking at it as closely as I could. I didn't look at Gandalf and think there's anything more that they could have done with it. I just think it's the perfect kind of Gandalf. They've got everything they need in there. And it's definitely one that I'd want on display. I think alongside Aragorn, it's the only big hit of the sets. So what were your thoughts on Gandalf?
Gandalf, for me, was the easiest one of all of them to decide on. Very much agree with you. I looked at the Gandalf and instantly I went, oh, that's Gandalf. You know, I didn't question any of the design choices, any of the aesthetics. I looked at it and was like, okay, that's Gandalf. And it's Fellowship of the Rings Gandalf. It's Mines of Moria Gandalf. It's Bridge of Khazad-dûm. It's instantly you looking at that Brickhead, you're taken back to the movies and those iconic images, You Shall Not Pass, and Ian McKellen and his fantastic work as Gandalf. So that is good because it's the perfect way, I feel, to epitomise an iconic character in a Brickhead. So for me, that was the easiest one to pick.
Yeah, nice. I think, we hadn't discussed this prior to coming on, but I thought that would be the case. Like I said, there was nothing on it that I thought could be any better or any different. I think it's just exactly what it needed to be.
No.
Okay, so on to the last one. And I've left this one to last because it was a tricky decision. The Balrog. I took a long time looking at this, and my immediate reaction was that I hated it. Like, hated it. Then I went back and looked at pictures and went back and looked at it, and I thought, I don't hate it, but I'm not wild about it. And after like sitting on it for a while, I really don't. I don't think I'm quite at hate, but I really don't like it. I feel like this was their first opportunity, almost like Funko Pops, to kind of do a supersized Brickheadz. I felt like it needed to have some sort of scale to it. If you're going to have him sat next to Gandalf on a shelf, you kind of want a bigger Brickheadz. And I don't know if that's just a choice of theirs, but they've made the choice to make Gollum smaller, so why not make the choice to make Balrog bigger? Doesn't make too much sense to me. But what were your thoughts, Josh?
Same as you, mate. I instantly looked at the Balrog Balrog, and I was like, no, get in the bin. just no. Like you said, Gollum, they've made Gollum smaller, so why can't you make the Balrog bigger? Because in the movie, the Balrog is like 100 times the size of Gandalf. You know, it towers over Gandalf. It towers over the Bridge of Khazad-dûm in Moria. So, like you say, a supersized Brickhead that would sell if it's like, I mean, hypothetically, if they were to do a set like you discussed on the podcast last week with like a diorama style set, you would have the Balrog either as a buildable figure or as a big fig. Why not give us kind of like the best of both worlds, a larger scale Brickhead built Balrog? This one, the scale of it is near. If we're getting a small Gollum, why can't we get a big Balrog? Having said that, I like this one more than I like Gollum, and the colour of the Balrog is nice.
Yeah. So that was where I went back and looked at the pictures. So my initial hate kind of got tampered a bit when I went back and looked at the pictures and actually thought they have used colour really cleverly on it. But I can't get over that. It just doesn't make any sense when you're trying to create scale with things like Gollum, or if they're going to do it with R2-D2. They've done it with Grogu. If you're trying to create scale between characters, and it doesn't have to be perfect scale. The Balrog doesn't have to be 4 times bigger than Gandalf or even 2 times bigger. Just a couple of bricks taller would make all the difference, I feel like, in this one. You get all that extra space for a bit more detail on him. And you then have this scale of, yes, this creature is bigger than Gandalf, and it would look better in a lineup. It just makes no sense to do Gollum smaller, then you've got Frodo, Gandalf, Aragorn, Arwen all the same height, when they are all very different heights as well. You think Gandalf,
Frodo.
Yeah. You think Gandalf and Frodo are going to be completely different, then Arwen and Aragorn are in the middle. I would have so much more understanding of this if Gollum was the same size as Frodo. If they had just decided to have them all the same size, I would have been like, fair enough, that's what you've chosen to do. But they chose to make Gollum smaller, and they've chosen not to make the Balrog bigger, and it annoys me. Really, really annoys me.
In terms of height,
I was looking forward to this one the most out of all of them. I think when we were talking about it with Seamus, and we were kind of doing a smash or pass with these, I said this was the one that whatever happens, this is the one I'm getting, because I know that I want Gandalf and Balrog on there. So this one hurt the most, I think. Like you said, you don't hate it as much as Gollum, but this is the one that I dislike the most.
Exactly. And I mean, you've just hit something there that it's only just occurred to me then when you said about the height of the Brickheads and stuff. A prime example of how height differential work is Hagrid, Ron, Hermione and Harry as Brickheads in the Harry Potter sub-theme. The Hagrid is a little bit taller than all 3 of them, and it worked.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think based on, because I've not got it to hand, but I know that when I've seen pictures of it, the Hagrid, I think it could just be how they've designed the head of it with his long hair.
Yeah.
But it could very well be the same size as the 3 of them. But I think just how they've designed it, it looks taller, even if it's like, say, half an inch or an inch taller. It just looks taller just based on the design of it. Even if they'd have just changed up the design so that it's the same height, but it looks taller just based on design, I wouldn't have minded. Yeah, and that would have been the same for them, but I don't know.
Even if they had added like just a plate onto the legs, just to kind of nudge. But the thing that, like, when you've got Gandalf's hat next to it as well, it's not going to look any bigger unless you add a brick or so onto it. I almost feel like they need to go back to the drawing board. This is the Sonic the Hedgehog situation where the fans need to do an uprising and they go back and do a complete redesign of it.
Yeah.
But obviously that's not going to happen because we've got the promo pictures. They're already well into production.
Yeah, and if they were to do more Lord of the Rings Brickheads, if this is how they want to start doing Lord of the Rings as a Brickheads theme, and I mean, if it sells well, you know they're going to do more. They're going to do like a Lord of the Rings Brickhead series 2. I hope that if they do a Legolas and a Gimli, they work out the height differential of that. If they do a Saruman and a Gandalf the White, I hope they find ways of changing the colour scheme of that. And also, if they were to do, say they were to do Pippin, Sam and Merry as Brickhead, would they be the same height as Gandalf, Aragorn, Arwen, or would they be smaller? Would they correct their mistake? There's so many different questions you have looking at these Brickheads, and you hope that if you're a designer and you're coming up with ideas and designs for, and you series of Brickheadz, these are the questions and feedback you would have to take and think, okay, we did it first time and it went wrong. Let us try again and give you what you want in terms of height and things like that. So I don't know. I want to see how well it sells first.
Yeah, I honestly think they've dug themselves into a bit of a hole with it. I think I think from now on they've just got to kind of keep everybody the same height and just accept that they messed up with Gollum. Because like I said, it would the Balrog or Gandalf or the fact that Frodo is the same height as Aragorn, it wouldn't bother me if they hadn't bothered making Gollum smaller. That's the bit that annoys me.
Yeah,
they've obviously they've put enough thought into that, but not enough thought into how it's all going to look. Because let's be honest, Brickheadz are collectibles. They're not playthings. We're not buying these. No one's buying these to play with. They are to be sat on a shelf, stood next to each other. And as a designer, surely you're thinking, right, how is this going to look in a lineup? If this is going to be sat on someone's shelf, how's that going to look? And it very much feels like that wasn't part of the thought process. I don't know whether it was or not, but we'll have to wait. Like you said, we have to wait and see, because they have to, if they've gone this far, they kind of have to bring out a Legolas and Gimli. Sam, Merry and Pippin have got to come in there. So yeah, it will be interesting to see moving forward. But certainly, I think both of us agreed that there were 2 hits and 4 misses on the first wave of 6. It's not a great start, is it?
Not a good track record, this, is it? And I mean, to be honest with you, Arwen is borderline. Correct the hair, and Arwen would be a hit. But it's still the fact that it doesn't even balance itself out. It's still 4-2. So it's definitely a massive miss on collectively as a majority,
and I think they've kind of, what they have done right is the fact that it's a Brickheadz line. And they've bought themselves some time, because if this was, let's say this was just a small kind of little play set of Lord of the Rings, and they've really missed the mark on that, that's really going to dampen everyone's excitement for the Lord of the Rings line. I think because these are Brickheadz, I'm still excited to see what they do with all the other Lord of the Rings Lego, the normal Lego. So I think that the thing that they've done right is bring Brickheadz out first, because I think realistically that's not going to be the money maker that the other sets will be. So
no,
we'll just have to wait and see, won't we?
Aye, we will.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was our main topic. So let us know what you thought, whether you thought these were hits or misses. For us, I think other than Arwen, most of these were fairly straightforward. But let us know if you thought any of them were hits that we didn't, or if you didn't like Aragorn and Gandalf. Let us know your thoughts.
The Fandom Bricks Podcast.